I didn't bother to stand when Marlene, the HOA president, slammed her palm against the folding table hard enough to rattle the paper coffee cups. She was flushed, jaw tight, and speaking just a little too loudly when she announced to the room that my sister was trespassing on association property and would be removed if she didn't leave immediately. I didn't argue, didn't match her volume. I just slid the envelope across the table and leaned back in my chair. She tore it open with the kind of dramatic flourish you save for bad news you're sure will vindicate you. Halfway through the first page, her expression locked in place. Her eyes stopped moving, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her lawyer leaned in to read over her shoulder, blinked twice, and the pink drained from his face like somebody had opened a valve. Bold black letters at the top read, United States Marshal Service. Below that was my sister's name and her federal credentials. Marlene's mouth shut so fast I heard the click of her teeth. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I hadn't moved to this little mountain subdivision looking for trouble. The opposite, really. My wife and I had been looking for a place where the loudest thing you heard after sunset was the wind moving through pine branches. Somewhere far from the endless traffic, politics, and petty escalations of city life. We found it in an old cedar-sided house on 3 acres at the end of a gravel road, tucked between tall pines and a narrow creek. The siding was faded in a way that made it blend into the trees, and there was a deck out back where you could drink coffee in the morning and watch the steam lift off the water. We bought it outright, no mortgage, no debt, because I wanted the peace of knowing that once I paid the county their property tax each year, nobody could tell me how to live. I figured we'd wave to the neighbors when we saw them, keep our yard tidy enough to be polite, and otherwise be left alone. The HOA seemed almost invisible at first. A quarterly newsletter in the mailbox, an occasional email about road maintenance or snowplowing, the kind of minor community housekeeping you don't mind paying a modest annual fee for. I skipped most of the meetings. I'd had enough committee drama in my working life, and I'd learned a long time ago that the less you ask from a homeowners association, the better the odds you stay off their radar. For the first 6 months, it worked exactly like that. I paid my dues, kept my driveway clear, mowed when I felt like it, and no one knocked on my door. The first crack in that piece showed up one Friday afternoon, taped to my front door. Not mailed, not slipped politely into the mailbox, taped directly over the glass, in the kind of bold, all-caps font you usually see on repossession signs. It was a notice of violation citing unauthorized use of common property by an unregistered visitor. The visitor in question was my sister, who had driven up to stay the weekend and help my wife recover from knee surgery. Apparently, she had parked her SUV near the community mail shed instead of in my driveway, and according to the notice, that was grounds for official action. At first, I assumed this was a mix-up. I called the number on the letter and got Marlene herself. The conversation lasted less than a minute. She informed me, without a trace of doubt in her voice, that unregistered visitors are subject to removal and that rules apply to everyone. When I asked her to point me to the section of the bylaws that gave the HOA authority over my guest list, she said, "Read the packet," and hung up. I did read the packet. Twice. There was nothing in it that gave them the authority to ban guests from my private property. There were vague lines about common areas and safety concerns, but nothing even close to what Marlene was claiming. I wrote a short, polite email pointing this out. No response. A week later, my sister stopped by again, this time just for one night on her way to a work conference. The next morning, there was another notice taped to my door. Final warning, it read, in bold red letters. If the unregistered female was seen again on HOA property, the matter would be referred to law enforcement. That was the moment my patience started to evaporate. I still wasn't angry. Anger makes you sloppy. But I knew the difference between someone enforcing rules and someone trying to flex authority they didn't actually have. I stopped emailing. I stopped assuming this was a misunderstanding. Instead, I started documenting. Every letter they sent, every notice they taped to my door, I photographed and filed it. I pulled the subdivision plat map from the county's records. I compared it to the HOA's original charter. I studied zoning filings from back when the subdivision was approved in the late 80s. I learned which easements were public, which were private, and which, most importantly, didn't fall under HOA jurisdiction at all. Somewhere in the middle of this, I mentioned the situation to my sister over the phone. She laughed at first, thinking it was just some petty neighborhood drama. But when she realized they'd actually threatened to call the police on her, the laughter stopped. "You know I could just show them my badge, right?" she said. "I'd almost forgotten. My sister wasn't just any visitor. She was a Deputy U.S. Marshal, with full federal credentials and the kind of jurisdiction that made an HOA rulebook look like a grocery list. We didn't scheme or make elaborate plans. I simply told her to stop by the next time she was in town, park exactly where she had before, and wait. It didn't take long. Less than 15 minutes after she pulled in, I saw Marlene marching up the gravel road, 2 board members in tow. She stopped at the driveway, arms folded, and announced that my sister was in violation of the HOA's visitor policy. My sister stepped forward, calm and steady, reached into her bag, and pulled out the leather credential wallet. She didn't raise her voice, didn't crack a smile. She just opened it, let the seal catch the light, and said, "Deputy United States Marshal. I'm here visiting my brother. Any questions?" Marlene stammered something about private property rights and security protocols. My sister asked her if she was accusing a federal officer of trespassing in the course of a lawful visit. The 2 board members looked at the ground like they wished they were somewhere else entirely. Marlene muttered about needing to review the bylaws and turned away. That's when I knew it was over, not just for this fight, but for any attempt they might make in the future. A week later, I attended my first HOA meeting in years. I brought copies of the subdivision's original plat map, the county's jurisdictional boundaries, and a printed statement from my sister's office confirming her visit had been lawful, appropriate, and none of the HOA's business. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply slid the documents across the table and told them that any future attempt to interfere with access to my property, by my sister or anyone else, would be considered harassment and reported directly to the county sheriff. Marlene didn't look at me for the rest of the meeting. Things got quiet after that. No more notices taped to my door. No more whispered conversations when I walked past the mailbox. A couple of board members resigned not long after. Maybe they decided volunteer neighborhood politics wasn't worth tangling with federal law enforcement. Or maybe they just didn't like the taste of their own medicine. Either way, the pines still sway in the wind. My wife's knee healed, and the only papers left on my front door these days are delivery slips for fishing gear. When my sister visits now, Marlene drives by without slowing down. Sometimes she waves. Sometimes she pretends not to see us. I don't care either way. It's quiet again, and quiet is exactly why I came here.